All right, let's continue discussing this and so many other multilateral issues that are dominating the global stage. Bring in our SABC International Editor, that's Sophie Mokoena, live to us in our studios here at Auckland Park. Great to see you as always, Ms. Sophie. Thanks very much indeed for popping by. Of course, the major development from this morning is the resignation of US Ambassador to South Africa, Ruben Brigidi. He says this is in line with a change in presidential administration. But of course, we're likely to take stock of his legacy, including the controversy around the Lady R and those claims that South Africa is providing Russia with weapons.
Yes, I spoke to the ambassador just before elections in South Africa. He was looking forward to continue to work with whoever was going to be in government. But at some point in time when I had a discussion with him, he indicated that in relation to the US, he was requested by President Joe Biden to come and be a senior US diplomat in South Africa. And at that time when President Biden asked him to come and serve in South Africa, he had received a confirmation to be a senior person in one of the universities in the United States of America. But he decided to agree to President Biden's request to come and serve in South Africa because he had a strong belief that the relationship between South Africa and the United States of America are quite critical. And as someone who had observed the developments in the country and the struggle, he felt very proud to be requested to come and serve in Africa, particularly in South Africa. And he was looking forward to strengthen the relations with South Africa as we saw all those initiatives. But we are correct, it became problematic during that saga of Lady R when the US vessel was in Cape Town and there were reports that it had arms. And unfortunately, that couldn't be proven. You know that President Ramaphosa did set up a commission to investigate. To date, it's very difficult to really come up with a conclusive evidence, and there was no proof. And I think at that time, many people felt very, very aggrieved because that led to a backlash in terms of the economy of the country. When I spoke to the Minister of Finance of South Africa at some point in time, Enoch Godongwana, said that was a huge damage to the fiscus and also to the economy of South Africa. And since then, the relations were not so good. We saw the minister inviting him, the then minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor, to talk to him about that issue. But generally, he was one person who was really committed to strengthening the relations with South Africa, launching that Phambili project with Atlanta authorities and trying to really build a strong relationship. But it's elections. This is the result of elections in the United States of America. All those who served under Biden in different structures will have to vacate office so that the new President-elect Donald Trump can be able to appoint people that he believe in terms of what they can drive in terms of the relationship both in and outside the United States of America. And therefore, it has to be people that he can trust. And I think the ambassador took a decision to resign. But anyway, his term of office was coming to an end next year. But perhaps if it was Kamala, he could have considered perhaps continuing. But with the new administration, the new sheriff in town, there's no way he can continue.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's amazing that it's been so long already. I mean, I remember when Ruben Brigidi arrived, he was tasting kotas in some communities, saying he wants to immerse himself in the South African culture. But as you mentioned, this is how the cookie crumbles. Of course, the world is also watching the G20 summit very closely, and it comes at a time where the US president gave Ukraine the go-ahead to use long-range weapons. Of course, what's taking place in Europe is likely to feature in some way. But, you know, how do you reckon this is going to go down with the summit currently underway in Rio?
I think the president of the summit, that is President Lula of Brazil, will try and ensure that this doesn't drown the summit. But of course, this is a big announcement from Joe Biden. The question is the timing. Yes, you want to salvage your legacy, but do you do it at a time where you have such a big meeting and there's so much to discuss in terms of building the economy, transformation of the global financial system, and also quite important other issues. And therefore, you holding the headlines with this announcement, because clearly the journalists will be asking leaders for reaction to this. And people are now waiting to see what's going to happen, whether Ukraine will start using those US long-range weapons at a time where you have the G20, which will divert the attention to the war in Ukraine. And we saw the statement from Russia, and also a video that was making the rounds in terms of President Putin earlier on warning that if this decision was to be taken, he will have to use the nuclear capability of Russia.
Gosh, yeah, and of course the whole world should be concerned about that. Another important meeting currently taking place is the SADC Troika. Top of the agenda, at least from what I understand, is the situation in Mozambique and in the DRC. But what I find interesting is that the, Emerson Mnangagwa, who of course is currently the chair, has already congratulated Frelimo. So I wonder how he's going to be able to negotiate some of the concerns around the electoral outcome in Mozambique.
What's even shocking is that the diplomat from Tanzania yesterday, as you know that yesterday there was a meeting of ambassadors and technocrats preparing for ministerial meeting today. In his statement, I don't know whether the guy did read the statement or he is informed or he's new in the world of diplomacy, congratulating the leader of Frelimo in terms of elections when there's this outstanding matter in relation to the electoral processes in that country. Not because there are protests, but we know that the Constitutional Council has to give a final verdict in terms of whether these results do stand. And therefore, when you have a process like that, him calling him the president of Mozambique, and secondly, even getting confused, not knowing who is the president of Botswana. When you look at his body language, he was laughing, not really serious, particularly when he mentioned Botswana. So my question, when I looked at this Tanzanian diplomat, his body language, when he was talking about Botswana, it's almost like, who is this one after all? That was shocking. And at a time where the chair of the Troika, organ on politics, defense and security, the president of Tanzania, is not even in the country. He is in Brazil, and she is in Brazil. She met the president of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa. And therefore, I don't know what's going to happen today, whether she is going to participate, open that meeting of ministers virtually or what. But it speaks to now this meeting. I don't know whether it will really be a fruitful meeting. And also President Ramaphosa not being in the country, and it's impossible for him to make it on the 20th to Harare because the meeting of leaders at the G20 in Brazil ends tomorrow. And as the incoming chair of the G20, he has to wait until end of the summit. And I think these are issues that perhaps as the region, the citizens of the regions would make their own informed decisions in terms of the state of the regional organization SADC in relation to issues that are related to peace, security, politics.
Yeah, absolutely. From one neighbor to another, we know, of course, Namibia is also gearing up for its own elections. We've been covering this for quite some time. I think it's less than a week to go till the polls finally open, which means, of course, that campaigning is in full force.
Yes, campaigning is in full force. Today, later in the afternoon, we are going to speak to one of the leaders of the opposition. But later this week, we will be speaking to SWAPO's candidate, that is the current vice president. Therefore, we'll continue to cover the elections in Mozambique and
Namibia.
In terms of the outcome and the tension around the results, but also the focus on Namibia.
Fair enough. All right. Got you. There's plenty to watch. And of course, SABC News at the forefront of all of that coverage. Our international editor is Sophie Mokoena. As always, thanks very much indeed. All right. So there you have it, up to date with some of the big stories you ought to look out for on this Monday. The president has also spoken out around the situation in Stilfontein. He also concedes that it is a standoff, calling, of course, for an amicable solution. More details, of course, throughout the course of the day.